Revelation 1864. From the 25th of March 1941. Free decision. It is divine will that the human being freely decides which path he will take. That he is free to take both paths, upwards or downwards, and that he now decides for himself without any coercion. For only this has value before God, what he thinks and does freely of his own accord, to which he gives his consent completely uninfluenced. For in this his whole being is reflected. He is neither forced to do one thing nor the other, but what his heart drives him to do is decisive for eternity. And thus neither external living conditions nor divine destiny determine the human soul's higher development, but solely its free will decides it, and thus every person is given the same opportunity to reach the state of maturity on earth if he uses his free will correctly, that is, uses it to approach God. For if the will is directed towards God, he will also always subordinate himself to God in his thoughts and actions and do everything which brings him closer to the eternal deity, and then his higher development is also guaranteed. The human being will indeed be taught what he should do. His thinking will be guided into the right path, but the free decision is up to him. He will always be free to do and think differently than it is divine will. For compulsorily complying with this will not result in spiritual progress, and therefore only what the human being does out of inner impulse is to be evaluated. If he only fulfills the task prescribed to him in a purely dutiful way, it will also only have the value of a fulfillment of duty which, however, cannot result in a higher degree of maturity for the human being, whereas the slightest act of neighborly love of free will, that is without incentive or reference to a reward, will place the soul into a higher degree of maturity because the gift of free decision was used in a God-pleasing way. A person can seemingly carry out great works of neighborly love, but if he does so under a certain amount of pressure or under the influence of other people, he will still not reap a great reward, for only the degree of love in which the deed was accomplished is decisive, that is, to what extent a person's love determines his will to act. A person capable of love also allows his will to become active. For anyone who is in love also desires God from within, thus love, free will and approach to God always go hand in hand. Where one is, there is also the other, but the state of compulsion, no matter from which side it would be exercised, is always a hindrance to the soul's maturity. Thus divine will may be taught but never compelled to follow it by means of coercive measures, for this would be no spiritual progress whatsoever. Amen.